In your relationship, do you feel like your partner is like jabbing at you, like poking you a lot of the time? This is a normal scenario for often one person in the relationship to feel like, but sometimes both. But what happens when this is occurring is it's basically little things your partner says that you feel like you need to defend, that you feel like they're being ried over. And most of the time, they're trivial things like, you know, I told you to turn left, or I told you to put the bin out, or you said you'll do this, or why don't you do that? Like little tiny things that are being said on a regular basis that don't amount to much really in real terms. But what they end up doing is they build up, because inside of us, if we're a type of person that feels like we're being poked, jabbed at, each time that little jab happens, we feel like a little bit of resistance, a reluctance. We feel a little bit of withdrawal, some resentment, some pissed offness. And often what we'll end up is we'll end up in this relationship with this little bickering kind of lines where that your partner might say, I'm going to this street and I'm going this way. And you might have already felt like you said that you were going to a particular street that way as well. It's just that the way they said it was more kind of, I don't know, righteous, I think you might call it. There was more of a tone to it. And because they use that tone, what happens is we end up feeling, if you are the person that feels jabbed in our relationship, in mine and Gal's relationship, I feel I get jabbed at. And I did ask her about whether she feels she gets jabbed at, and she said that she doesn't in the same way. She has her own experience of something similar, but it's definitely something that some of you will be able to relate to. And it feels when they say that, I said I was going down this road, and you've already said, well, your version of going down that road. It's kind of like, well, that's what I fucking said. Why are you like saying it that way? It's the same as what I said, but slightly different. Why do you have to poke at me and jab at me? Why can't you just go, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Let's go this way. And what happens is every day in your relationship, if you're a person that feels jabbed at, when they speak, your partner speaks in a normal way, a normal fashion to them, a normal tone, they're not intentionally jabbing you, they're not intentionally poking you. But if you don't deal with it, what you end up feeling like is that you're constantly being attacked and you have to defend yourself. Now, when you feel like you have to defend yourself, ultimately what you do is you withdraw at some level, or you become over assertive and over aggressive. You can deal with it one of those two ways. I find a lot in relationships for men, they feel that their wife, their partner, their woman is poking at them all the time or jabbing at them all the time. Um, and they feel like they can't do anything right or stop the jabbing. They don't get time to breathe. It's almost like being in a boxing match. And you don't ever get like a end of the round. There's never a reset period. And even after the reset period, you've still got the jabs from the round before that have happened. So you're never like letting it go. And what that ends up being is it ends up being a series of a build up over time of ultimately is a small thing, but really ends up being a huge thing, because you're constantly got your guard up, you're constantly in a kind of fighting stance mode, a defensive mode or attacking mode. You're continuously working on protecting yourself. And in a relationship where you're working on protecting yourself, it's very difficult to be your best version of yourself. We go down to a lower version of who we really are, and we respond and react based on the idea that we're defending ourselves. What that really means is you're not being the best version of you in your relationship, so you're actually making it harder for your partner. and then you actually not even satisfied yourself, because you go, why am I always so petty over things? Why am I always so defensive? Why am I always so protective? I don't want to be righteous like this. I don't want to be protecting myself and nitpicking over little things. But the deeper experience is that somebody's unhappy with you constantly, and nobody can live with that experience and be their best version of themselves. So we have to learn to be able to really let things go, to really let things go and not take the jabs that we maybe feel are coming at us. We need to be able to, just like a boxer, duck, dive, weave, defend, parry, whatever it might be. We need to learn to do that with these comments so that they don't hit us, because it's almost like the feeling is, if you are this kind of person that experienced the jabbed, it's like you're being pinged all the time. And what you're trying to end up doing is you try to end up stopping the person jabbing. You try to end up stopping the person poking. You try to retaliate in a way that's going to have them defend or put them on the back foot so you can get a little bit of a reprieve. But that never really works, because they're not even doing it intentionally. They're doing it, from their own system of operating, their own patterns, but they're not intentionally jabbing you. They're just stating things the way they would state them. Maybe they're exhausted, maybe they're tired, maybe they've had a hard day, maybe if it's a woman, maybe the kids are bugging them, maybe they're carrying the weight of the world. Who knows what it could be? If it's a man, maybe they've had a tough day at work. Maybe they're getting a lot of pressure from their boss. Maybe they're feeling inadequate or like they're not doing enough. Maybe they've got money problems. There are all sorts of things that run in the background that cause us to get into a heightened state of needing to protect ourselves and cutting down our ability to communicate effectively. And one of the ways that ends up doing that is we end up with these little snarky comments, these little righteous statements that are nothing at all to us. I told you once. You said you'd do that. What's the matter with you? Why don't you do that? They're nothing to us when we're making them. But when they're received like this jab and this poke. And you end up being like, for fuck's sakes, can you just stop poking me for a little bit? I can't get any break. I feel like in this relationship, I'm in a continuous boxing bout. And because I feel like I'm in a continuous boxing bout, I feel like I can't be myself. I'm on guard all the time. I'm trying to protect myself. I'm not loving and caring. I'm defensive. And it never seems to stop. And because it doesn't stop, I can't be kind to you. I can't be as loving and empathetic as I'd like to be. I can't be as considerate. You only have to tell me a small thing and it sparks me off. Like, I told you not to put the milk on that shelf. I told you to put it on the other shelf. I mean, in real terms, that's a simple statement that doesn't require any retaliation. But if you're the type of person that feels jabbed, feels poked, feels picked on, you will feel like that was an attack. If you're not that type of person, you won't really know what I'm talking about. You'll be listening to me going, what is he on about? How could you be so affected by little comments? But it's common in a relationship that we get into these bickering bouts of trying to be right about little tiny things. And it's amazing how many relationships, how big a problem this small scenario can become. And I see it a lot where couples come to me and they're at the point where they don't know how to communicate anymore. They don't know how to get on. They don't know how to resolve their issues. And because they don't know how to resolve their issues, they're separating. They've driven a wedge between them. they've driven a wedge in between their relationship, and they find they're at each other all the time, and they don't know how to stop being at each other. And then you speak to them for a little while, you find out it's over tiny things. Like I'm not saying they're unimportant to the couple. I'm just saying they're not big issues like, um, major financial disagreements, major disagreements over the children, even not feeling loved or connected sometimes. It's just this constant bickering or at each other. And often what causes it is this idea that one person, sometimes both, but one person feels that they're being poked at all the time. And you're not being poked at. It's as simple as that. They're just talking in the way that they talk. They're expressing themselves in the way they express themselves. They're not deliberately going out of their way to have you feel like you've been poked at and jabbed. Sure, sometimes in an argument and sometimes in a relationship that is happening on occasion, but 99% of the time you're taking something with much more offense than you need to take it. You're taking something with much more venom than you're supposed to take it. And it's a little bit like a dripping tap. If you drip a tap on the same spot on your hand for a few moments, it doesn't make any difference. You don't care. It's not a bother to you. But if you hold your hand in the same place for an hour, then that drip starts to become quite annoying. If you do it for a week, then it becomes really frustrating. If you do it for longer than that, you start to wear your hand away. It'll start to hurt. And this is what's happening here. Over time in your relationship, what's happened is this has built up and built up because you've never dealt with it. You've never learned how to let things go. You've never learned how to give something up. You've never reset to zero, and you don't know how to reset to zero most of the time. And resetting to zero means like completely letting it go, starting every day fresh. So when you're in a relationship, you don't have the experience of being jabbed at on day one. So everything's fresh, everything's new, everything's exciting. It probably doesn't happen for the first few months, but once it starts happening, you then get your mind into a cycle of looking at it. Like your focus goes there, and because your focus goes there, your energy goes there. Now, this may only happen in real terms 2 or 3 times a day, but I know in my relationship, when it happens to me, the heightened ramping up of energy that happens in my body is absurd based on the communication that's happening. It's like it doesn't make any real sense. We can, like I said about like driving down a route, we can be driving down a route and Gail could say to me, I already told you to turn left. And I'm like, well, I don't remember that, but it's like it feels like she's full on attacked me. She's full on having a go at me. And it's because it's building on the day before and the day before that when she told me about something else that felt to me like I'd done something wrong, or I wasn't good enough, or that I was upsetting her, or that I was letting her down. And then the need to justify myself, validate myself, the avoidance of being unfairly treated. And then that experience of having the response, feeling why would somebody that loved me talk to me like that? Why would somebody that says they love me treat me that way? Because of that, then I want to defend myself. And if you're going to defend yourself, you get this heightened state come over your body, because like any time you need to defend yourself from either a real or perceived threat, there's an adrenaline dump, a cortisol dump that happens in your body. And you become on a heightened state of awareness where you're looking to protect yourself, to get back into a state of safety. And so a little comment like, I already told you to turn left, can feel like, I mean, I call it a fake saber-toothed tiger. It's like we are looking out there for threats. Our ego-driven identity and defense mechanism is looking out there for threats. So what happens is we have this fake saber-toothed tiger that we see, which we look at, in my case, my wife, telling me to turn left. And my emotional brain mistakes my wife telling me to turn left from a fake saber-toothed tiger to a real saber-toothed tiger. And because of that, what happens is I then have to defend myself, have to protect myself. And when I protect myself, I get the adrenaline dump, the cortisol dump, and I don't let it release from my body. I feel the tension, and instead of letting the tension dissipate and staying in my adult brain, as I would call it, and saying, hang on a second, is this really dangerous to me? The fact she's telling me to turn left with a certain tone, or for the second time, or as if I've done something wrong. I don't do that, and I can react to that and react in a way that is feeling like I need to protect myself. If you're doing that every day in your relationship over 1 year, it becomes exhausting. And it doesn't take long before that turns into resentment or pissed offness, or before you feel like when you walk into the room with your partner, you're having to put your guard up ready. You're having to get your adrenaline already ready, pumped, just in case they say something to you. Once that starts happening, what you end up doing is you just end up in this zone of defending yourself, protecting yourself, and you start jabbing back. Generally speaking, if your partner's not a person that feels jabbed, they won't feel it as a jab, but they'll feel it as something in their world. And when they feel it as something, they'll start fighting back harder. Before you know it, you're in a full-scale kind of boxing match confrontation with your partner. And like any boxing match, you're going to get wounds that take healing. Now, in a boxing match, you get punched a few times, you get a few bruises. You then don't have another boxing match for 6 months or a year. You have time for those wounds to heal. By the time you come into your next boxing match, essentially what's happened is the wounds have healed and you're reset back to zero. You're ready to start again. You're fresh and you're ready for the next round, the next fight. But in a relationship, it doesn't work like that. You don't get the break period. You don't get the time for your wounds to heal. So the jab that happened yesterday builds onto the jab that happened today, which builds onto the jab that's going to happen the next day and the next day. You end up feeling continuously wounded. Eventually, if you're going to feel continuously wounded, it's going to have a major effect on your relationship. It's going to really take away your, hey baby, it's going to really take away your ability to be present, to be kind, to be empathetic, to be compassionate. It's going to start to have a real impact on your way of relating to your partner and your feelings for your partner. So what you have to do is you have to learn there's two things, two key principles we teach in this area. The first principle is leaving your post. Because when you're feeling like you're jabbed at, what you're going to do is you're going to take a righteous stance. You're going to take a stance that is in defense of that. And that means you're grabbing hold of some belief or rule or story that you have, some opinion that you can retaliate with to defend yourself. Once you're attached to a post in a relationship, what's going to happen is your partner is naturally then going to need to defend themselves from their post. And what we find in relationships is when one person leaves their post, when one person leaves their post, generally there's no conflict. But normally what you find is both people are holding on to their post so tight because they're so used to being jabbed at, or their version of that, that they refuse to leave their post, and then you've got this conflict. Then you can go by if you want, babe. You okay?
Yeah, I'm just looking for my heels.
And so the first part is leaving your post, being able to let it go and give up being right so you don't jab your partner. The second part's really important, is to be able to let it go. You've got to be able to let it go. And I mean let it go to zero. So most people in a relationship are not letting it go to zero. They're letting it go to one. And then after they let it go to one, they will then, the next day, it'll build to two. And then they'll let it go. All right, there's my daughter in the background. Then they'll let it go to two. And then they'll let it go to three. And then they'll let it go, but it'll be at four now. Before you know it, in the relationship, you've never let it really go. You're running at a 7, an 8, or a 9, and that's where the real tension happens. That's where you really build up and you have tense conflict all the time that you can't get over, because you're so sick of these pokes, these jabs, these little annoyances, and they've built up and built up, and you never really give it up. You never really get off it. We call this, that we talk about the infinite hook. You're hooked in. And when you're hooked into being right. You're hooked into avoiding being wrong. You're hooked into dominating and avoiding being dominated. You're hooked into justifying yourself and validating and invalidating others. And you're hooked into winning and avoiding losing. Once you're on the hook, the payoffs, you go to these things, they're payoffs. You get the payoff of being right. You get the payoff of justifying yourself. You get the payoff of invalidating someone. You get the payoff of winning. You get the payoff of dominating. But with every payoff, there comes a cost. And when you see how the infinite hook works, the cost, when you're doing this in your relationship or anywhere in life, in truth, when you're being right about something, when you have a fixed way of being about something, you're being right about it, there's a cost to it. We get attached and focused on the payoff in these little jab sessions and these relationships. But what it costs you is it costs you. Now forget about what it costs your partner, because it costs your partner the same, but I'm talking about what it costs you. What it costs you is it costs you vitality. It costs you your full self-expression. It costs you happiness and joy. It costs you love. It costs you connection. So there's the costs that happen. And what happens is that they'll jab at you and you'll get this little hook in, right? It'll horse you like that. And before you know it, you're getting all the payoffs, and you forget to breathe and let go and go, hang on a second, what's really important here? Because is this thing that I'm arguing about like a really major world war problem? Or is it just a tiny little thing, like I get sick to death of being told over and over that I should have gone the other way? Look at your relationship. Where is it happening? And in my relationship, every time we pull into a car park, if I'm driving, there's a important directions coming to me of how I need to park, as if I've never parked on my own. And I'm like, these little jabs, like, go that way, go this way, do that, do this. I'm like, fuck, leave me alone, let me park. So I want to avoid being dominated in that situation. I want to avoid being told what to do. I want to avoid being controlled. And I want to then, in my mind or out loud, I'm going to invalidate Gail. As soon as I start doing that, any love, affinity, connection, self-expression, vitality, happiness, joy, it's all gone out the window. It's not available when you get caught on a hook, on the infinite hook. So we have to learn how to unhook. In our relationship, we have to learn how to unhook from what we perceive as being the little jabs or pokes that come our way on a daily basis. Now, if you're a man, I know that what you've done is you've started to withdraw. You started to withdraw in your relationship. And because you've started to withdraw, your partner's feeling, so this is a dynamic that happens, because as a man you started to withdraw, your partner as a woman is not feeling connected. She's feeling like you're not there for her. The minute she feels like you're not there for her and she's not connected, she doesn't feel safe. She doesn't have your presence. And for a woman, it's all about safety and security. So when the dynamic's going this way, the man feels like he's jabbed and poked at, and he either becomes assertive or starts to push push his point of view across, be right. What the woman starts to do is feel disconnected. As soon as the woman feels disconnected, she's going to jab and poke more to connect. She's going to jab, push, prod, and poke more in order to connect with you. And the more she tries to do that, the more you're going to end up feeling like you're not loved or you're not cared about or you're doing something wrong from a masculine point of view, and you're going to retreat more and more. And then it becomes this cycle where over years, this causes separation, this causes divorce because it didn't get dealt with. And it doesn't make any difference how hard she pushes, because what you're now into is you're into this completely complete zone of withdrawing to protect yourself. Now, from the feminine point of view, if the woman feels like she's being jabbed at and she feels like she's being prodded all the time, she can't get anything right. If maybe it's creating an inadequacy wound in her, she gets hooked into this and starts to dominate or want to dominate, or she starts to want to protect herself, invalidate, win, avoid losing. Whatever she does while she's on the hook, it's going to cost her her self-expression and her love and her vitality, her happiness as well. What's happening for the woman is she'll get her needs met elsewhere, and she'll go to the kids, or she'll just shut down and just get on with life and just start to suck it all up and start to pretend everything's all right, maybe sweep things under the carpet. She'll stop communicating. Once a woman stops communicating, it's like, well, it's really like for all of us, but for a woman particularly, she then builds up all the emotion inside, and over years, that little seed of withholding communication, not saying what's going on for her, not feeling like she can express herself, those feelings inside build up to a level that it's just like a dark seed, and it just eventually will take over, and she'll withdraw, shut down, build up a lot of resentment, a lot of anger. And now in your relationship, you've got this build up over time, which in a relationship, you never really you never fall out of love. What you do in a relationship is you put walls between the relationship, different types of blocks. Anger blocks, resentment blocks, pissed off blocks, withheld blocks, all sorts of blame blocks. There's all these blocks that you put in the relationship. And so, you know, when couples come to us and they've got problems, we don't, generally speaking, we're not making them fall back in love, because they haven't fallen out of love. They just can't see each other anymore because there's this fucking big wall in between them. So what we have to do is we have to start dismantling the blocks. And one of the ways to do that is this process of letting things go. Letting go of everything you can let go of. I'm not saying you become a doormat and get walked on. I'm just saying these jabs that you think are happening are not happening the way you think they're happening. They're actually not major issues. Sure, there are some major issues you need to discuss, like disagreements about finances, disagreements about parenting, disagreements about how you should spend your time together. Yes, there are things you need to discuss, but 99% of the time people come to me, it's not those problems that are causing the issue. It's these little jabs that might be happening, these little build-ups. A lot of other stuff as well, but this is one of the things, this build-up of things that's happening that's putting a wedge in your relationship, driving you apart. So the first thing to do is start to be aware of where you feel that you are being jabbed. And from that place, start to ask yourself, do I really need to defend, retaliate, say something here? am I really being unfairly treated? Am I really being told there's something bad that I need to look up? Is it a real danger to me, like a real saber-toothed tiger? Or is this a fake saber-toothed tiger appearing real? From there, when you ask yourself that question, you'll find that 9 times out of 10, you don't even need to have a conversation about most of the things you're having conversations about. You just can let them go. The second part is just to be able to leave your post. Notice what's going on. Leave your post. And don't worry about if they leave their post. That's not your business. If they can leave their post, that's great. But what will happen is you'll find when you leave your post, they start to let go of theirs. It's a dynamic, a pattern that's happening that one person can stop. So that's what I'd say about this. If you're a person that feels jabbed at, poked at, prodded, and you've let it build up over time, reset. Make a note of all the little things that you think are important jabs, and when you've written them down on paper, you'll find it doesn't matter. You'll find that most of them are irrelevant, most of them are not important. Then you can start to focus on the important issues in the relationship that are going to bring you back together and create a great relationship. Okay, that's all for me today.